If you want to learn how to set up a vulnerable Active Directory environment for hands-on security practice, then this video is for you. In this video, we will set up Windows Server 2019, which will be our domain controller, and we will also set up Windows 10 Enterprise, which will be our users, the ones that we will use to exploit the vulnerabilities on our domain controller. So let's start by installing our Windows Server 2019. So we go to Firefox, for instance, and we write Windows Server 2019, and we will click in this one here. Now we will download the ISO file 64-bit edition. Okay, as you can see, our file was downloaded, so we can go to our terminal, and my file was downloaded to downloads. So if I list everything that it's inside of my downloads directory, you will see that now I have my ISO file here. However, we should rename this file because, as you can see, the name of this file is a bunch of numbers and you can easily get confused. So we can rename it. To do that, we can use the command move, then the name of our file, and we can rename it Windows Server 2019.iso, and you click enter. Now, if you list everything, you will see that now instead of a bunch of numbers, you can see that you have a file called Windows Server 2019, and this is much easier to identify than the one with a bunch of numbers. Okay, now let's do the same, but this time to our Windows 10 Enterprise. So we go to Firefox, we write down Windows 10 Enterprise Microsoft Evaluation Center, like so. Now you click here, and you can click here 64-bit edition. Okay, and it's downloaded, so let's go to our terminal. Let me list the contents of this directory, and as you can see, our Windows 10 Enterprise it's here. So we will rename it. So move 19, and we autocomplete the name, and we will rename it Windows _10 Enterprise.iso. Now, if you list the contents of this directory, you will see that now you have Windows 10 Enterprise and Windows Server 2019. So, we have our ISO files, so we can begin by creating our Windows Server 2019 VM on our VirtualBox. So, this is our VirtualBox, and now what we can do is to click on New. We give a name, in this case it can be Windows Server 2019. Now the ISO image, you can click on this, you can click on Other, and on Downloads you will click on Windows Server 2019 ISO file. Now here where it says Skip Unattended Installation, you check it, and we do this because we want to make a manual installation. In other words, we want to customize the settings as we need. And then we click Next. Then we change the base memory to 4096. Then we click Next. And we change the disk size to 100. And we click Next. Here you have the summary of your changes. And you click Finish. And here we have a new VM that is our Windows Server 2019. Now, as we did to others, let's create a group where we will insert this VM. So to do that, we right-click on this VM, we click on Move to Group, click New, and here we will rename it, rename group, and the name will be Active Directory, and you click Enter. Now we will move this group into our home lab. To do that, we right-click on it, we click on Move to Group, and we will click to Home Lab. And as you can see, now our Home Lab has our firewall, management, cyber range, and Active Directory. Okay guys, now we are ready to configure our Windows Server 2019, but before we do that, let's add our 2 users on our Active Directory. Now, to do that, we do the same as we did to Windows Server 2019. We click on New, we insert a name, and the name can be Windows 10 Enterprise VM1. And this VM1 will be our user 1. Then, here where it says ISO image, we will upload one. So we will upload this one here. And we will also check the skip unattended installation for the reasons that I've told you before. Now you click next, we click next, we change the disk size to 100, we click next and we click finish. And now we have our Active Directory and we have also our user 1. Now we will add a new user, the user 2. To do that, we click on New, we name it so we can give the same name, so Windows 10 Enterprise, and this time VM2, and we upload an ISO file, we click on Other and we click on Windows 10 Enterprise, we check skip unattended installation for the reasons that I've told you before, and we click next. We let the base memory as it is, but we increase the disk size to 100, like so. And we click next, and we click finish. And now we have 2 users and 1 machine to attack. And we are now ready to configure our VMs, but let's start by configuring our Windows Server 2019. So we select our VM, in this case Windows Server 2019, we click on Settings, we go to System, we uncheck Floppy, we click on Hard Disk, we set it at first, we click on Optical and we put it at second, and we do this because of the reasons that I've told you when we installed pfSense and Kali Linux. Then we go to Network, and here on Adapter 1, where it says Attached to, we will insert Internal Network. The name will be LAN 2, and we click OK. Now we go to Windows 10 Enterprise VM1, we go to Settings, we go to System, we uncheck Floppy, we click on Hard Disk and we put it at first, the Optical at second, we go to Network, where it says Attached to, we click on Internal Network, and the name will be LAN 2. Then we click OK, and we do the same to our VM2. So we click on Windows 10 Enterprise VM2, we click on Settings, we go to System, uncheck Floppy, click on Hard Disk, put it at first, Optical, put it at second, we go to Network, here we select Internal Network, and the name will be LAN 2 as well, and we click OK. Now we can begin by setting up our Windows Server 2019. So we click on Windows Server 2019 and we click Start. Okay, now you can insert here the language to install, the time and the keyboard. You click Next, then you click Install. Now here we choose the Windows Server 2019 Standard Evaluation Desktop Experience. Now we choose the Standard Evaluation Desktop Experience over Data Center Evaluation Desktop Experience because the Standard Edition provides all the necessary features for a typical home lab setup, which fits our needs. The Data Center Edition offers more complex and unnecessary features that are not required for our home lab setup. And we prefer the Desktop Experience version because of its graphical user interface, which simplifies management and navigation. Now we can click Next. Now we accept the terms and we click Next, and we will select Costume Install Windows, and we choose this type of installation because it allows us to perform a clean installation of Windows Server 2019, ensuring that we start with a fresh environment. The upgrade option is for people who already have Windows installed and want to keep their files, their settings and applications while updating to a newer version. Then we select the only disk here and we click Next. Now we just need to wait a little bit because as you can see our Windows is being installed, and if you see your VM restart a few times, that's perfectly normal. Now that our installation is complete, we can set up and configure our OS. Now we just need to insert a password for administrator. Now you click Finish. Now in this case we can't use Ctrl-Alt-Delete to log in, so we need to use our shortcuts from our VM, and those shortcuts are right Control, Delete, and you will have access to your administrator login page. Now you enter the password that you created for administrator, so let's do it. Now we can click here, don't show this message again, and we click here on Close. Now the first thing that we will do is to remove our Windows Server 2019 ISO file. And we do this because even though we have set the VM to boot from our hard disk, there is a risk of accidentally changing the boot order, which could cause our VM to boot from our ISO file instead of the hard disk. This usually doesn't happen if in your settings you have your hard disk at first, but just to be sure, we can remove our ISO file. Now, to do that, we go to Devices, we go to Optical Drives, and we go to Remove Disk from Virtual Drive. Now, let's install guest additions, and we do this because by installing guest additions makes the virtual machine more user-friendly, etc. Now, to install guest additions, we go to Devices, we click on Insert Guest Additions CD Image, then we go to our File Explorer, we click here where it says CD Drive VirtualBox Guest Additions, and we double click on VBox Windows Additions, like so. Now we click Next. This is where the installation will be saved, and we click Next, and we click Install. Now we choose Reboot Now, and we click Finish. Okay, now to log in we do the same, so right Control, Delete, we insert the password of our administrator. Now we will remove our guest addition file as we did to our Windows Server 2019. To do that, we go to Devices, we go to Optical Drives, and we click on Remove Disk from Virtual Drive. Now we are ready to make some configurations on our network, but before we do that, let me explain a couple of things. When we configured our pfSense on our previous video, the one that you can see here above, we assigned an IP address to our OPT2 interface, also known as AD-Lab. That IP address will act as our gateway, and you will need to use it when configuring our machines, the Win Server 2019 and the Win 10 Enterprise. I also want to tell you that we didn't enable DHCP on our OPT2 because we will enable a role on our AD-Lab called Domain Controller. A Domain Controller is a server on our AD-Lab that manages things like user logins and also gives out IP addresses to the devices on our AD-Lab. On our setup, the Domain Controller, also known as DC, will provide IP addresses to our Windows Server 2019 and to our two clients that are Windows 10 Enterprise VM 1 and Windows 10 Enterprise VM 2. So, we disabled DHCP on pfSense for OPT2 interface to avoid conflicts, because having two servers, in this case pfSense and DC, our domain controller, giving out IP addresses to the same machines can cause some problems. Okay, now that you understand this, let's move on to our network setup for our Windows Server 2019. Before we can set up our network on our Windows Server 2019, we should have pfSense powered on because we need internet access. so we power on our pfSense. Okay, now we should have internet connectivity, so we can go to our Windows Server 2019, show. Okay, now to set up our network, we right click here on the network icon, we click on Open Network in the Internet Settings, and we click here Change Adapter Options. Now we right click here where it says Internet and we click on Properties. We click on Internet Protocol version for TCP IPv4 and we click on Properties. And here we click where it says use the following IP address. The IP address will be 10.80.80.2. The subnet will be 255.255.255 and 0. The gateway will be 10.80.80.1. And then, here where it says preferred DNS server, we insert 10.80.80.2. Then we click OK and we click Close. And here we click Yes to enable our internet. Now let's rename our machine because the current name of our machine is a bunch of letters and numbers. To do that, we can close this. We go to Home, we click on System, we click where it says About, and we click here where it says Rename this PC. As you can see, the current name is this here, and we can rename it DC1. That stands for Domain Controller 1. And we click Next, and we click Restart Now, and we click Continue, and we wait a little bit. And now we can log in. So right control, delete our administrator's passwords, we click enter. Okay, now we will install our Active Directory and our DNS. But before we do that, let me explain why we are doing this. As I mentioned before, we will enable the domain controller role in this lab, and the Active Directory is very useful when we have our domain controller enabled because it keeps track of users, printers and computers on the network. For example, when someone tries to log in, the domain controller checks the AD, so the Active Directory, to see if that person is allowed to log in and what that person can access. In other words, our AD, so our Active Directory, helps organize users and devices, while DC, so the domain controller, manages logins and ensures users have the right permissions with the help of AD. We also install DNS because our Active Directory uses DNS to store special records that help other computers find services like our domain controller. Okay, now that you know why we install DNS and Active Directory, we can move on with the installation. So we click on Manage, we click on Add Rules and Features, we click on Next until we see a window that has Server Roles, so this one here. And here we click where it says Active Directory Domain Services. Then this page tells us that we need to have these features here in order to install Active Directory. So we click Add Features. Now we click DNS Server as well. And these are the features that we need to have in order to install DNS Server. And we click Add Features. Then we click Next. And we click Next until we reach the page where we need just to confirm our installation. Now we just click on Install and wait a little bit. As you can see, our features are being installed. Now we can click on Close. So now that we have our Active Directory and our DNS installed, let's configure them. And to do that, we click on this small flag and we click where it says Promote this server to a domain controller. Then in this page, in the deployment configuration page, we click on Add a new forest and we choose this option because we are setting up a completely new Active Directory environment from scratch. And here where it says root domain name, we give a name. I will give ad.lab. Now we can click Next In here, we will insert a password for the directory services restore mode. So let's insert one. And you need to save this password very well, because even though you will not use it frequently, you will use it in cases where, for example, you need to restore your Active Directory database from a backup if it becomes corrupted. We click Next. Now here the NetBIOS domain should automatically be filled, and this name will be the first part of your domain name. Now you click Next, and you click Next, and Next once again. And here you can click Install to start the domain services setup. You wait a little bit. Now you click Close to reboot the system. The system will be rebooted, as you can see. Okay, now let's log in. So now, as you can see, the username was changed, and now we just need to insert our password, but it's the administrator password, okay guys? Okay, now we will configure our DNS. Now, before we do that, let me just tell you that our domain controller will act as DNS server for the devices connected to AD.lab, to ad.lab. However, for the DNS service on our domain controller to function properly, we need to configure a DNS forwarder. Now you ask, but what's a DNS forwarder? Well, a DNS forwarder is a server to which your DNS server sends queries that it cannot resolve locally. If your DNS server does not have the information needed to solve a DNS query, it forwards the request to another DNS server that can resolve it. Okay, now that you know this, let's configure our DNS server. To do that, we go to the Start menu, we expand the Windows administrative tools like so, and we will double click on DNS. We select DC1 and we double click on Forwarders. Then we click on Forwarders, in this case it's already on Forwarders, and we click on Edit. And here we enter the IP address of our AD.lab interface, so the 10.80.80.1. We click Enter, and then we click OK, and then we click Apply, and then OK. Now that we have our Active Directory and DNS configured, we still need to enable DHCP on our domain controller. Now, as I mentioned before, we disabled DHCP on pfSense for our AD.lab because our DC can handle DHCP tasks. Now we can take this off, and to enable DHCP we click on Manage, then Add Roles and Features. We click Next until we see a window called Server Roles, so this one here, and we click where it says DHCP Server. And these are the features that we need in order to enable DHCP. So we click Add Features, then we click Next until we see the confirmation page, and here we click Install. Now we just need to wait a little bit. As you can see, our features are being installed. Okay, now we can click Close. So we enabled DHCP, now we just need to configure DHCP. To do that, we click here in this small flag, and we click on Complete DHCP Configuration. Then we click Next, and we click Commit. Then here we click Close to complete the installation. Now we go to our Start menu, we expand our Windows administrative tools, we click on DHCP, we expand this, we right-click on IPv4, and we click on New Scope. Now let me just tell you that the scope is a range of IP addresses that can be assigned to our devices by the DHCP server. Now we can click Next, we enter a name, so AD.lab, we enter a description like default DHCP for AD.lab. We click Next, and here the start IP address will be 10.80.80.11, the end IP address will be 10.80.80.253, the length will be 24, and this is the subnet mask. Then we click Next, here we don't insert anything, we can click next once again, and we will increase the days to 365 days. And by doing this, when an IP address is assigned to a device, that device can use that IP address for a period of 365 days, and then it can request a new IP address. Now we can click next. We select yes, I want to configure these options now, next. Now here you need to enter the default gateway, the one that I've told you before. So 10.80.80.1, we click add, we click next, and we click next. Here you let this empty, so you click next. And here you select the one that says yes, I want to activate this scope now. You click next and you click finish. Now let's complete our domain controller setup by enabling Active Directory certificate services. The point here is to enable Active Directory certificate services in order to set up something called a certificate authority. By enabling Active Directory certificate services, we can create and manage a certificate authority on our Windows server. This certificate authority is responsible for issuing, managing, and revoking digital certificates which are used for various security purposes like authenticating users and devices and securing communications. So let's do it. We can take this off. So we go to Manage, we go to Add Roles and Features, we click Next until we see a page called Server Roles. So this one here. We enable the Active Directory certificate services, we add the features, then we click Next, we click Next, and we click Next. And here we have already enabled certification authority, so we click Next and we click Install. Okay, now we can click Close and let's restart our server so our modifications can be applied. To do that, we go to the Start menu, we click here on the power icon and we click Restart. And you click Continue and let's wait a little bit. Okay, let's log in. So right control delete our administrator's password. We just enabled our certificate. Now we just need to make some configurations. To do that, we click here on this small flag and we click here where it says Configure Active Directory Certificate Services on the destination server. Here we click Next. We enable Certification Authority and we click Next. We let as it is. We click Next. We let root CA, so we click Next. And we click Next until we reach the confirmation page. So next, 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 and next. And here we have the confirmation page. Now we just click Configure and we'll wait a little bit and then we click Close. Okay guys, now we have everything configured. However, we just need to configure our users, the ones that we will use to exploit this machine. But before we do that, let's first add a user, the one that will be the administrator of our domain controller. Now, to do this, we go to our Start menu, we expand the Windows Administrative Tools folder, we go to Active Directory Users and Computers, so we right-click where it says ad.lab, we click on New, and we click on User. Now we will insert the data from our administrator of our domain controller. So I will insert as first name Batista, and my last name will be Cyber, and my user logon name will be Batista Cyber, like so. Now we click Next, we insert a password, so let's do it. We uncheck this option, we check the password never expires option. Then we click Next and we click Finish. So as you can see, we now have a new user. Okay, now we expand the ad.lab, we click on Users and we double click on Domain Admins, like so. We then click on Members, so here, we click Add, and here we will enter the name of the user that we just created. In my case was 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐬, like so. Then we click on Check Names, and here we have it, and then we click OK, then we click Apply and OK. Now we log out of our administrator's account and we log in with this new user, in my case with the 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐭𝐫 user. To do that, we go to the Start menu, we click on Power Icon and Restart and Continue. Right Control plus Delete and we have our login page. However, we will click on Other User and we will use the user that we just created. In my case was 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐵, and as you can see, we successfully log in as admin of our domain controller. Now we are ready to create the two users that we will use to exploit this machine. So let's begin with our user 1. To do that, we go to our Start menu, we expand our Windows administrative tools, we click on Active Directory Users and Computers, we right click on our domain name, in my case is ad.lab, we click on New and we click on User, like we did to our admin of our domain controller. Now you can insert a random name, a name that you want and you will remember. And also, as I told you before, you should always save all the passwords and usernames in a safe place. This first name I will use Sean, the last name will be Spencer, and the user logon name will be Sean.Spencer. Now we click Next, we give a password, so let's do it. We uncheck this, but we check password never expires. And we also check user cannot change passwords, and we click Next and we click Finish. Now let's add our second user. To do that, we repeat everything, so we right click on our domain name, New, we click on User and we give a name. So this will be Juliet O'Hara. Now we click Next, we give a password, we uncheck this, but we check password never expires and we check user cannot change password. Now we click Next and we click Finish. Okay guys, now we have almost everything done, but before we move on to our Windows 10 Enterprise setup, we will make our AD Lab vulnerable. However, if you don't want to make your machine vulnerable, you can skip ahead to the next video chapter. If you want to learn how to make your machine vulnerable, then let's do it. So the first thing that we will do is to right-click on the Start menu, we select Windows PowerShell Admin, here we click Yes. Now we will run a vulnerable AD script. Now let's use the following command. This command changes the PowerShell execution policy to bypass, allowing all scripts to run without restrictions. We do this because we will run a script that sets up a vulnerable Active Directory environment. Okay, now we click Enter. Now we will run the following command. This command downloads a script from GitHub, then replaces the word change.me with the name that you used for your Active Directory domain, in my case was ad.lab, and then executes the script. So, to recap, we ran the first command to allow PowerShell to execute scripts without restrictions. And then we run this second command to download, modify, and execute the script. After the script is executed, the system will be restarted automatically, as you can see. Now let's log in, and to do that we right Control Delete. Now I will enter the password. Now we will disable Windows Defender and Firewall because this will allow us to execute penetration testing tools and exploitation scripts without interference. Now, be aware that this action should only be done in a secure, controlled and isolated environment, such as a lab setup, which is our case, where you can safely explore these settings without risking actual data or network security. Now, to disable Windows Defender and Firewall, we click on Start menu, we expand our Windows administrative tools, and we click on, Group Policy Management. We expand our forest, we expand domains, we right-click on ad.lab domain, we click on Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. We will name it Disable Protections. We click on OK. We expand the ad.lab domain. We right-click on Disable Protections and we click on Edit. Here we expand the policies on computer configuration. Then we expand the administrative templates. We click on Windows Components and we click on Windows Defender Antivirus in this one. Here we select Turn off Windows Defender Antivirus. We click on Edit Policy Settings. We click on Enable. Then we click on Apply and then we click OK. Then we double click on Real-Time Protection. We select Turn off Real-Time Protection, Edit Policy Settings, we enable it, we apply the changes and we click OK. Now here we go up, we expand our network, we expand network connections, we expand Windows Defender Firewall and we click on Domain Profile. We select Windows Defender Firewall Protect All Network Connections. We click on Edit Policy Settings, we set it to Disabled, we click on Apply and we click OK. Now we can exit our Group Policy Management editor. Now here on Disable Protections we right click on it and we click Enforced. And with all these steps we disabled our Windows Defender and Firewall. Now we will enable remote login for local admins. Remote login allows us to control and manage a computer from a different location, hence the term remote, because we access another computer remotely. In our case, enabling remote login is beneficial for several reasons, one of which is gaining remote access to the system using one of the users that we created. So let's do it. So we right click on our ad.lab, we click on Create a GPO in this domain and link it here. We name it Local Admin Remote Login, we click OK. Then we right click on Local Admin Remote Login, we select Edit. Here on Computer Configuration we expand Preferences, we expand Windows Settings and we right click on Registry. Then we click on New and we click on Registry Item. Here where it says Hive, we let it as it is, and this Hive means that all the changes that we are making, such as enabling remote login, will be applied to this Hive, to the 𝐂𝐸 local machine Hive. This Hive that we have here contains configuration information specific to the local machine. Now that you know this, let's continue our configuration. So here, where it says Key Path, we click on 3 dots. Now we expand this, we go to Software, we expand the Microsoft, we expand the Windows, we expand the Windows folder, we expand the current version, we expand the Policies folder, this one here, and we select System. And we click Select. So the path should be Software, Microsoft, Windows, Current Version, Policies, and System. Here on the value name you can insert Local, Account, Token, Filter, Policy. Then the value type you select reg.g words. The value data you can insert a 1, like so. So this path here takes us to the part of the registry where system policies are stored. The value name identifies the specific policy that we are setting, which in our case controls remote administrative privileges for local accounts. The value type tells the computer what type of information we are putting in, and the value data, which in our case is 1, enables the policy. Now we apply and we click OK. So we enabled remote login. Now let's enable WinRM. Now, for those who don't know, WinRM is a very known feature that allows remote management and command execution on Windows computers. Now we can click here to close this window. To enable WinRM, we right click on ad.lab. We click on create a GPO in this domain and link it here, and the name will be enable WinRM server. Now we click OK. Then we right click on enable WinRM server like so, and we choose edit. Now we expand the policies, we expand the administrative templates, we expand the Windows components, we expand the Windows, let me see. We expand the Windows Remote Management WinRM, we click on WinRM Service, and we click where it says Allow Remote Server Management through WinRM. And we click where it says Edit Policy Settings. Now we set the policy to Enabled. Now in the IPv4 filter you can enter all, like so. Then you can click Apply and you click OK. Then you click where it says Allow Basic Authentication. You click Edit Policy Settings. You click Enabled. You click Apply and you click OK. Where it says Allow Unencrypted Traffic, you click on it. You edit policy settings. You set it to Enabled. You click Apply and OK. Now you can go to Preferences and you can click on Control Panel Settings, like so. Now you can right click on Services, then you click on New and then on Service. On Startup we choose Automatic. To choose the service name we click on 3 dots and we select Windows Remote Management WS Management, like so. And we click Select. The service section we select Start Service, then we click on Apply and we click OK. Then we go once again to Policies, we go to Administrative Templates, we go to Windows Components and we click on Windows Remote Shell. We select Allow Remote Shell Access, we click on Edit Policy, we click on Enabled, we click on Apply and we click on OK. Now we can close the group Policy Management Editor, like so. Now let's enable RDP, also known as Remote Desktop Protocol. RDP allows you to connect to a computer and control it as if you were sitting in front of that computer. Now to enable RDP, we can right click on AD-Lab, we click on Create a GPO, we name it Enabling RDP, we click OK. Now we right click here, we click on Edit, let's expand this, we expand the policies, the administrative templates, we go to Windows Components, we go to Remote Desktop Services, so let's see, we expand this, we expand the Remote Desktop Session Host, and then we click on Connections, like so. Then we select Allow users to connect remotely by using Remote Desktop Services, we click on Policy Settings, and we click on Enabled. Then we apply the changes, and we click OK. Now we can close our Group Policy Management Editor, like so. And now let's enable RPC, also known as Remote Procedure Call. Now, RPC is like a program that asks to another program to do something. From a hacker's point of view, this can be used to execute commands on the machine from a remote location. So let's do it, and to do that we right click here, we create a GPO, we will name it Enabling RPC, like so, we click OK, we right click here, Enabling RPC, we click on Edit, we go to Policies, we go to Administrative Templates, and we go to Systems. here. Now let's expand this. We go to remote procedure call, we click on it, and we enable RPC endpoint mapper client authentication. We click on it, we click on policy settings, and we click on enabled. Then we apply the changes and we click OK. Now we just need to ensure that all the changes that we made on our group policy objects are applied consistently across all relevant users and computers in the domain. To do that, we will enforce the domain policies. Now we can close this and we can close this. So we right click on the start menu and we click on Windows PowerShell admin. We click yes, and here we will use the command gp update, then force. This command is used to ensure that all group policy changes are enforced immediately. So we click enter. I'm sorry, I wrote force in the wrong way. So force, like so. Let's see. And as you can see, our computer policy update has completed successfully. And we did it, guys. Our domain controller setup is complete, and now our machine has vulnerabilities that you can exploit. Before we finish this video with the setup of our Windows 10 Enterprise VM1 and Windows Enterprise VM2, I want to remind you that we need to keep this machine powered on while we set up our Windows 10 Enterprise VM1 and VM2. Additionally, every time you return to use your AD Lab, whether with user 1 or user 2, you need to have your DC, aka Windows Server 2019, powered on. Now let's begin by setting up our Windows 10 Enterprise VM1. But first let me just tell you that we will create a local user for each machine, and we create these local users because they are required to complete the Windows 10 Enterprise installation, and also they are required to gain initial access to the system. The local user allows you to perform necessary initial configurations such as joining the machine to the domain. Once the machine is joined to the domain, we will be able to use our AD users instead of our local users. So let's begin. So you can minimize this. You click on Windows 10 Enterprise VM1 and we click on Start. Now, as we did to our Windows Server 2019, we select our language, our time and our keyboard input. Now we click Next and we click Install Now. We accept the terms and we click Next. Then we choose this one here, Costume Install Windows Only Advanced, because of the reasons that I told you before. Now we click here, the one that we have. We click Next and we wait a little bit. Okay, now we choose once again the region, then the keyboard setup. Now I will skip, but if you want you can add another layout. Now here we will click where it says domain join instead, and this is because it allows us to join this computer to our AD domain. Now we enter a random name that we want to give to our local user, but as I told you before, we will not use it. This is just for us to be able to log in and make the changes that we need in order to use our AD users. Okay guys, I hope I'm making sense, but if you have any questions, please leave those in the commentary section down below. Now I will name this Sean as well, then click Next. I will give it a password. We will confirm that password. And now you choose 3 security questions. I will click No and Accept. I will click No and Accept. Just send required diagnosed data and accept. No and accept. No and accept. No and accept. And we wait a little bit. Now, as we did with our Windows 2019 server, we will remove our ISO file and also we will install guest additions. Now, to remove our ISO file, we go to Devices, we go to Optical Drives and remove disk from virtual drive. Now to install guest editions, we go to devices and we click on insert guest editions CD image. Then we open the file explorer. Now we expand this. We go to CD drive. We double click on VBox Windows editions. We click on yes. We click on next. We click on next and we click install. Now we click reboot now and click finish. Now let's log in using the user that we just created, so the local user, and now we can remove our guest editions image. To do that, we go to devices, optical drives, and remove disk from virtual drive. So our first user is set up, but now we need to add this VM to our AD domain, so we can log in with our AD user. Now, to do that, we click on the search bar and we write this PC. We click on properties. We click on advanced system. Let's expand this and this. We click on advanced system settings here. Now we click on computer name and we will give a name to our computer. So we click change. We give the name win10-vm1. The domain will be ad.lab. We click on more. We add ad.lab and then we click OK. Then a pop-up window should appear, and here you should enter the credentials from your admin user. In my case was Batista Cyber, and then let's insert the password and OK. And we click OK, and you click OK to restart now. So we close this and we restart now. And now we can log in with our AD user. So to do that, we choose other user. Here we can use, for instance, your first user, the first one that you created. In my case was Sean.Spencer. Let's insert the password and log in. And as you can see, we could log in with our AD user. Okay, now we can confirm if we are indeed a AD user. We go to our PowerShell, like so, and you can run the command who am I. And as you can see, we are Sean.Spencer. And now we are ready to do the same to our second user. We just need to repeat all the steps that we did on our Windows 10 Enterprise VM1. So we go to our Windows 10 Enterprise VM2, we click on Start, we choose the language and the time and the keyboard, as we did before. We click Install Now, we accept the terms, we click Next. We click on Custom Install Windows Only Advanced. We click on this drive because it's the only one that we have. We click Next and we wait while our Windows is being installed. Okay, now we choose once again our region. We choose the keyboard, and if you want, you can add another keyboard layout. I will skip it. Now here, as we did on our user 1, we choose domain join instead. I will give the name of Juliet. This is our local user, but as I told you before, we will not use it. This is just for us to be able to log in and make the changes that we need in order to use our AD user. Now we click Next. We give a password. We confirm that password. We choose our questions. Now we wait a little bit. We click No, Accept. No, accept. Send required diagnosed data. No. 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 And we wait. Okay, now we can close this and we can remove our ISO file. So we go to devices, we go to optical drives and we remove disk from virtual drive. Also, we will install our guest editions. So we go to devices, we go to insert guest edition CD image, we go to our file explorer, we expand this PC, we click on CD drive, and we double click on VBox Windows editions. We click yes, next, next, install, and wait a little bit, and we click reboot now and finish. Now we log in as this user, so Juliet. we insert the password, we click yes, and we will remove our image. So we go to devices, we go to optical drives and remove disk from virtual drive. Now let's add this machine to our AD domain. To do that, we click on the search bar, we write this PC and we click on properties. Also we can expand this and this, and we click on advanced system settings, we click on computer name and we click on change. Here we can use the following name: Win10-VM2. Don't forget, this is our second VM, okay guys? Then we click on domain and we enter ad.lab. Then we click on more and we insert here also ad.lab. Now we click OK, then OK. Now we insert our administrator credentials, the password, and let's see. Welcome to the ad.lab domain, OK. OK, now we close and we restart now. Okay guys, now we can log in with our AD user, our second AD user, and to do that we click on other user, we insert the name, so Juliet.O'Hara, and then the password. And now you can click here to close this, and let's see if we are indeed Juliet O'Hara. To do that we open our PowerShell, so PowerShell like so. We can insert who am I, let's see, and we are indeed Juliet O'Hara. One last thing that we will do is to verify if our users' VMs are connected to the AD environment. To do that, we go to our Windows Server 2019, show, let's right control delete, login. Now you can close this, you can minimize this, and we go to our start menu, we expand Windows administrative tools, we go to DHCP, we expand this and IPv4, let's expand this as well, we expand scope and we click on address lists. And here we have our DNS entries to these VMs, to our Windows 10 Enterprise VM1 and VM2. And that's it guys, now you are all set to explore and exploit these vulnerabilities safely. If you liked this video or if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And don't go anywhere without setting up Metasploitable 2 and Kronos on your home lab. See you next time, stay curious, stay safe, and happy hacking! Bye bye!